Hi, I'm Nikki Felbert. I'm a filmmaker and continuous seeker of life's truth and natural magic. And here's where I get to share amazing interviews and findings with you, from people that have followed a calling and have a wealth of knowledge to share. This series of podcasts focuses on different aspects of the sacred sites I'm working on for my film, so I get to do some extra research and share it with you. Jeff, it's so wonderful to see you. Jeff is a doctor of natural medicine and he is the Life Alignment founder. Life Alignment is a phenomenal healing technique and more. Jeff, hi, tell us a little bit about this amazing practice that you brought in, that you've birthed into this world.
Lovely to see you, Nikki, and thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate that. And yes, life alignment is and simply put, it's a system of healing and transformation that works on the known fact that we know recently from quantum physics, and of course it's been known forever in distant past cultures, that everything is energy. So life alignment works on the energy spectrum, identifying blockages within the subtle field. Of course, the Chinese worked with this many hundreds of years ago through acupuncture, and the East through chakras, and we've been able to identify and photograph the auric field. But it works holistically in the sense that it addresses all aspects of our life, not only our bodies, our physically. So if one has physical symptoms or conditions, it can certainly work with that, but it works on the environment, it works on our food and water, our homes, our businesses, all based on the same principle, that where energy is blocked, we're going to get symptoms arising, whether it's in a business or in our home or in our bodies. But the main thing about life alignment, it works on two fronts. It identifies the blockage of energy, specifically what organs, what glands, through specific points, very specifically, by what we might call priority. In other words, what is ready to shift. But the most important thing is it identifies the emotional blockage. In other words, the underlying cause of the condition. So life alignment, using dowsing techniques or muscle testing, will take the person back to its original cause, or where it has been replayed. So if something happened within the womb or early childhood, that's going to repeat itself throughout a person's life. So it might not be useful to go back necessarily into the womb or in the first few years of your life, although we do that, but it will identify through the higher consciousness of the person where that has played out, because it becomes an unconscious program. So I'd say that life alignment works at the level of the unconscious, not stuff that will come up in speak therapy and talk therapy. You can do that for years and never access that underlying pattern, because most of the time it's buried in the subconscious. And that pertains to a business as well. We go into a business not as a business coach at a cognitive level, but work metacognitively.
What does that mean?
Identifying what's in the field. It's beyond the cognitive. In other words, it's beyond the mind. So it will identify, because we all have a field, right?
Yes.
Einstein said that the field is the primary agent that governs the molecule. So we made up of molecules. Everything's made up of molecules. The field is causal to the manifestation in form. So in a home or a business or an environment will identify in the field what's blocking the flow of energy. Shows up as blocking communication at a physical or personal level. And so, which will really rarely be identified through cognitive means, through sort of cognitive coaching. So
Yes,
that's really life alignment.
Yeah, I've certainly experienced that myself, and I'm lucky that my husband is a life alignment coach, and he's done some workshops with you, which has been incredibly powerful. And I've been lucky enough to be a guinea pig, and lucky enough, I must tell you guys the story of when I survived. The story of when I first met Jeff was decades ago, I think. And he was telling people about his modality. And at the time it was called body alignment, right, Jeff?
That's right.
Yeah. And he was telling a group of people how this modality worked. And he called me he said, does anyone have a bit of scoliosis? And I have a bit of scoliosis in my spine. And I bought one because it was amazing. This rainbow card, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the card. And Jeff, you put it on just under my back and chatted for about 10, maybe 15 minutes. And when you'd finished chatting to the crowd, I got up and my spine was straight. And I was like, okay, I'm sold. This is amazing. And that was my introduction to you and to now what is life alignment.
What year was that? That must have been a long time
over
ago.
20 years ago.
Using the rainbow card for that. Now we have much more advanced technology.
Yes, yeah, and I'm lucky enough to have a lot of that technology in my house.
Right.
And also, so let's go a little bit into the technology. And you use these cards, and they have some interesting, maybe what I would call sacred geometry on it, and they have a little magnet in them.
Right.
How does this card store the knowledge? How do you use a card that can shift something so profound?
First of all, the magnet is not using magnet therapy. The magnet is a very, very weak magnet and works to store, to hold the information. I'll call it information. And how that information is inserted into the magnet is through my body. Energy is transferred from the cosmos, from a higher source of intelligence that comes from beyond the place of duality, really, because we live in duality. And this comes from a place, let's call it, of a place of oneness, and is infused in the magnet. The geometry is just a signature so that we recognize what card it is. It's not the geometry that does it or the symbol that does anything. And the magnet holds that information permanently. It's like a homeopathic remedy, really, where the alcohol or the glycerin or the little pillule holds the information. But with homeopathy, if you put it into an electromagnetic field, it will negate the information, whereas with what we call the vortex card, that's a vortex card, that will hold really forever. So I have cards from 25 years ago, and they're still functioning well. So we have a range of cards that help to deepen the healing process, helps to protect us from electromagnetic fields. It helps to balance our homes from geopathic stress.
So that would be water running under houses, or
streams of water, veins, cracks in the plates, or special lines, magnetic lines like curry and different lines that is part of the Earth's grid.
Right. And
And
we looked a little bit at some ley lines with Dean Naprini. You came with me
that's right.
when I was filming.
That's
We'll
right.
get back to that though.
Yeah. So the earth, in a sense, has a duality as well. It's a very powerful healing being, but there are Hartmann lines, Curry lines that are part of the nervous system of the earth, that if you happen to sleep on one of those lines, or a stream, or a crack in the plates, you're going to get ill because it has an energetic disturbance.
Right.
So I was an architect before I became involved in healing. So I worked with this for a long time and saw that people would get ill from their homes where they slept. And we would visit their homes and move their bed before we had this technology. And their patterns, their conditions would shift.
Wow.
So the vortex system came about around 1993 or 94. And sometime after body alignment was in process, but for almost as a gift from the universe, saying, we have these energies that in the world of duality seem negative, but we can take that energy, even microwaves that power your cell phones or electromagnetic fields, geopathic, and transmute them into a positive energy. So they become a blessing rather than a curse. So when we transmute the energy of a stream or a particular magnetic line, it actually gets very strong. So because it has been polarized. So that's how we'd work, for instance, with cell phone radiation. We have special cards, for instance, that fit in the cell phone. I'll show you mine. These are...
See if I've got a modern one on mine.
Yeah,
yes, I've got the same one.
Different cards. I've got another one here. And so what it does, it takes the negative spin, the harmful effect on the body, and literally polarizes it to a positive spin, so that actually it becomes beneficial. I know that sounds absolutely crazy,
Yeah.
but when we test with applied kinesiology or muscle testing, it will strengthen rather than weaken. And so in a sense, we have all these negative energies around. We have now with 5G, 4G, 5G, and all our routers and everything else, we are surrounded by a sea of very invasive forces.
Right.
But
and you've seen the effects of those on people's bodies?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's so much research. A lot of it has been whitewashed and suppressed. But we've seen the effect of people that cannot speak on a cell phone or in front of their computer. And this I was doing in the 1980s, actually, working with people in large offices, airline companies with hundreds of computers, people getting sick, headachy. I worked with other technology at the time, and we would transform their environment so that they didn't lose energy, they didn't get ill.
And so not only, so was this before your cards that you were...
That's before. It was very, very expensive technology that, I mean, had limited effect. I mean, it really sort of worked at a certain spectrum. When I received intuitively the vortex cards, I was absolutely amazed, because I've been researching this field for many years as an architect.
Yes.
And it did thousands of times more, because it contained a higher consciousness that knew exactly how to transmute that energy to something positive. And so it was such a blessing to receive that. And we see the effect on the body, on all sorts of conditions, as you said, back then, using just the rainbow card on your body. Now, that same card we'll use on the structure of a house. We'll put it
Yes.
on the front door, and that will balance out all the negative fields in a home, whether you've got streams or Benker lines or Hartmann lines, and everything will become neutral, and the electromagnetic fields.
Yes. So
But special cards for the router, it's a different system.
right, right. But if you just have the rainbow card, which is a beautiful blue card with rainbow colors, if you're not able to see it, if you just have that, it's actually going to help with a lot of radioactivity as well as
Absolutely.
balancing out the house. Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Have you felt the effect of the rainbow card in your home?
I have, yeah. I mean, now I have other cards that we add to it
Right,
to
right.
boost them, and but I had the privilege of moving to a most beautiful home, and we struggled to sleep, and we actually experimented with a few different cards, and finally found the right ones. Don't ask me their names because I don't know the names of them. But
Right.
we found. I actually had a dream about which cards we were supposed to use to
Oh,
balance it out,
amazing.
and for me, it made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It converts a home which has a lot of negative energies through our electromagnetic fields and rotors and geopathic stress. It really converts it into a safe and sacred space that you can be comfortable in.
Yeah, and amazing you can actually do that on a person's body as well. So
Right,
shifting structurally and shifting emotionally.
right.
How does it work? So you did talk a little bit about going back to the root cause of something that's then manifested in the physical body. How does it work that you you can heal yourself by going back to a root cause?
You know, when we really what we do, we repattern old traumas in a whole variety of ways. It's not done in one way. For each client, there's a different pathway based on their makeup. So there's a whole series of questions. We work with lists of emotional patterns, identify the exact pattern. We all have core patterns that we come in, maybe from a past life, from family structures that we've inherited through our ancestry. So we have core patterns, and we develop core patterns
Right.
based on our need to strategize, safety, to get attention from our parents, to get love, and so on. So there are different pathways. There are archetypal patterns that are
Yes.
universal, and we work with that. And there are a series of questions that will navigate the person through. But in essence, all the questions lead to creating a whole new reality, because the old traumas that sit in our body are at a very low frequency,
Right.
because they involve pain, anger, grief, sadness, whatever. And that's a low frequency if we had to measure the frequency. By repatterning that, and for everyone, that's a different way to do that, we release that trauma from the body. We then, through whether it's the cards or the points or the hands, the body streams energy into that blocked area, because where there's trauma, there's an energy blockage. And that's why wounds don't heal that quickly. If you've had an injury, an accident,
Right.
it'll take time. When we remove the trauma, the body heals itself, by the way. The body does the healing.
Yes.
It allows the body to stream energy into that part, whether it's an organ or gland or tissue, and we provide extra energy to do that. So it helps the way the body heals. It happens very, very rapidly. As you saw with the rainbow card, your spine aligned, actually that happened within the first minute. And, I might have been speaking for 15 minutes, but
Yes.
that happens instantly, not because we're working on the body, but
Yeah.
we're working on the field that then is reflected in the body. And the field is easy to work with.
Right.
To change this molecular structure takes a lot of time. You've got to
Right.
manipulate structure and mental patterns. So you have to go to a higher order.
Yeah.
And that higher order is often beyond the mind,
Yes.
and goes to the root cause, and then provides the right frequency so that we transmute that old negative frequency, low frequency, to a high frequency, and the body heals, sometimes immediately or quickly.
Yes.
And the story, of course, is a big part of it. So we guide the individual to really recognize, because most of the things that we've experienced with our childhood and our parents, we spend the rest of our life blaming and cursing what happened. In other words, we become victim to the pattern.
Yeah.
And what happens in what we call a balance, a process, a treatment, is that we begin to see the cause of that, the reason, the gift, the blessing of why the soul chose those parents when the person's ready. Not everyone does that. And why they chose that particular pattern. Because we all have core patterns, because they were what the soul chose to learn and grow. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And so when we see that, but you can only see that from a higher perspective.
Yes.
You can't see that from the mind. The mind can't solve mental issues.
Yeah.
It sees that from a much, we take the person to a higher frequency,
So
where
it's very
they can see the
empowering.
perspective. Oh, it works with empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
what it works with.
So it's not just working on a higher plane, it's actually bringing it back to the person or the business or the house, or maybe not the house.
Exactly. Yeah.
To say, this is what the issue is, we're clearing it, but now that you know, you've been empowered. It's something that
And
you
it'll
can
change the way they deal with situations for the rest of their lives. In other words, we move from reaction to action, to response, really. So we respond to circumstances, traumatic even, in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Through welcoming and seeing the blessing and transmuting it in that way. And so we've seen thousands of people change their lives in this way. Across the
I'm
globe.
one of them, myself included. I do find it very empowering to work with life alignment, and to really, because it really brings home why you are doing a certain thing, what that pattern is. So it becomes cleared with the practitioner,
right.
And you getting to really understand it for yourself in such a quick, easy way. It just flows.
Well, it's rewiring the brain, really, our neurological pathways, which get stuck and set early on. But we know about brain plasticity. So we work a lot with the brain and all the different pathways, and we can repattern those neurological pathways because they have become habits.
Yes.
And so life alignment is about breaking old dysfunctional habits, which then become belief systems.
Yes.
And that becomes our magnet that we attract circumstances into our life. If that magnet or for those filters have negative belief systems, that's what we attract in our lives.
Yes, again and again.
Yeah, all the time. So we change the magnetism, really, because we are magnetic. We change our attraction and manifest positivity, and life responds. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Life just responds immediately. And that's how it works.
It's absolutely fascinating. It sounds complicated from the point of view of how it all came about, and but it sounds also very, obviously because I've experienced it, I know the simplicity and flow of it as well.
Mm.
How did you come to this? I know you studied in your younger years anyway, kinesiology and acupuncture and nutrition, and you've definitely brought some of those aspects into this modality. But how did something that has so many aspects to it and that just kind of clicks into one wholeness, if I can put it that
Yeah.
way, how did you come up with that?
You know, as an architect, in fact, when I first started practicing architecture in 1970, 71, my love for this field of healing from a child sort of played out, and I started working with healing, but more what we might call spiritual healing, which is pouring tons of energy into people,
Right.
even whether they were ready or not, and most of it leaks out after a while because they're not ready. And so I started studying everything, all the kinesiologies and Chinese medicine, acupuncture, studied a lot of things. And we did week retreats in Canada. This was all in Canada. Started in South Africa and then took it to Canada. And I was working intuitively. I was just being guided throughout from the beginning. And I had a number of experiences while I was in the army that they were near-death experiences that gave me trust. I realized I was being protected and supported because I was saved from the most unbelievable situations in the most miraculous ways. So I taught for many years and practiced for many years different energetic principles, but I realized I was burning out. I was traveling around the world offering these retreats and a clinic and saw clients around the clock. I realized that I needed to have this shared, something that other people could do as well. So it wasn't me. And I knew that would happen somehow. I didn't know how, but I was led one day to go to our retreat in Canada. It's on a lake, which was our health retreat. And I literally downloaded intuitively through guidance a series of points and procedures that were completely different from everything I'd learned before.
Wow.
Which blew my mind. I couldn't understand, but I had in my toolbox a lot of techniques, but what came through was on a different level, a different frequency, and I couldn't wait to get back to the clinic. Started trying it out on clients, then people were waiting for me to teach it, and I started teaching, and that was in body alignment, module 1 at that time in 1991. And then every year a new module would come, and now we're at, well, not every year, now we're at module 7, but many other techniques at the same time. So it's developing, but just to say, Nikki, that my mind could never have developed that.
Right.
It is way beyond my mental understanding, and it comes from a source of true knowing and wisdom that understands what we need in the world today. Because it appeared in 1991, and it was really indicated to me that this was to provide for us, for our ability to deal with what is coming. It sort of foresaw what is unfolding now with all the changes and everything. And it's miraculous how it evolved, because each time I received a piece of information or a module, I didn't know where it fit in.
Right.
I just taught it, I practiced it, But only when I saw the full hologram, really, it's a hologram, did I see how every piece fits in perfectly. Now, my mind, I don't think any mind has the capacity to do that,
Right.
because it requires surrendering to a higher wisdom.
Which is
And
something that you can do, which is partly why it's come through you. Something where
well,
you are able to surrender to that,
yeah,
and
and
allow it to come through.
I was given the experiences that prove to me that there's something I can trust in terms of the universe.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's something we can all do with, is a little bit of trust in the universe.
Yeah. Today, when we look at the world, it's difficult to trust anything. Yeah.
It is sometimes very difficult. We get into emotional wormholes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very grateful for life alignment. It's a beautiful tool. I'd also like to get a little bit of your knowledge. I know that you have traveled a little bit to some sacred sites around the world. And as you know, this is something that's very close to my heart, because I'm working on a film on sacred sites in South Africa. And
Right.
you've come with Dean Laprini and I to one of the sites. And I'd like to know from you what differences there are energetically between some of the sites you've been to. First of all, what sites have you been to? And what differences do you find in the sites that you've been to outside of South Africa and inside Southern Africa?
Mm. Wow. Big question.
Long question, yeah.
You know, I would say that the sites in South Africa are unique, really. I mean, this is the origin of man,
Yes.
really. And we know the heartbeat of Africa. So it pulses with a different rhythm. And I've been to Sedona in the States and Shasta and, many places, into the Great Pyramid and sites in Israel and Middle East. And they all have their own quality.
Yes.
I worked a bit in Egypt, in Cairo, and with the pyramids. And now I think we have to understand that a lot of intelligence and understanding came from other places, because the time that this intelligence came, we were seemingly in the Dark Ages, right? Primitive man. But simultaneous to that, there were high civilizations. And this is what I think I tap into, some of these intergalactic civilizations that are still providing us intelligence, technology. And so each one has, of course, Egypt has a very specific role to play on the planet.
Yes.
And I think there's an interaction. Of course, there are pyramids all over the world.
Yes.
In South America, Middle America, in Eastern Europe. So there are pyramids everywhere, and a lot of them probably undiscovered. And they all worked together, creating an energy matrix, because they were energy generators.
Yes.
And depending on the civilization in that particular country, they produced what was needed at the time. Now, of course, South Africa also had visitations probably for gold, it had natural resources and so on. Anyway, that's a whole long story. But so the difference is really remarkable, but I still feel, because of the spirit of Africa, that there is something unique here. And I think anybody that's come to South Africa or Africa, it literally fills their being and they long for it forever. You know, it's something we aspire to. I travel all over the world and speak to people who have been here. And whether they're on a sacred site or not, I mean, Cape Town has Table Mountain, which in itself is a major chakra.
Yes.
So people that come here just feel it as they get off the plane. It's a pulsation. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East, and I know Israel, for instance, and I've visited Cairo and different places, has a different sort of pulsation. I mean, it's very, very intense.
Yes.
And you know what? They can be measured because there are ley lines, there are or maps of lines that measure the Schumann resonance, for instance, and lines of intensity, whether they're magnetic or electric. So you feel, for instance, in the Middle East, there's a line that goes through Israel and Cairo, down Africa, comes down here, that is highly electric, but has a less of a magnetic field. So it changes the relationship. And it's quite perceivable when you land in these places and people feel that.
Yeah.
But each for different purposes. You know, we have the manifestation, for instance, of crop circles. Let's say the sacred sites in the UK, which I've spent a lot of time working on, activating old sacred sites, because, for instance, even in Italy and Sardinia and Turin, which is a major focus of different positive and negative or white and dark energies, a lot of these places have lost the original energy, the purpose for which they were created.
Or perhaps
And
not
so,
lost, perhaps they're just buried beneath
yeah,
the newer
it's gone
energies.
into a dormant, exactly, because it's
Right.
not utilized any longer. And I've had incredible privilege of getting access to some of these sites and being given permission from the site itself to help major ley lines in Europe and UK and Israel to be reactivated in some way, so that it can be part of the healing matrix of the planet right now. Because we know the Earth has immense healing ability, doesn't it?
Yes.
And
absolutely.
it has consciousness, and the Earth being, Earth Mother, really supports us in the deepest way. So that's at the earthly level and the heavenly level. There are massive forces that are interceding at this time. And they work together, heaven and earth, as a polarity.
As above, so below.
Exactly, exactly. So everywhere on the planet, there are different energies that are being activated for different reasons. And the sacred sites are coming back into their true function, I think, for these times. What do you think?
I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of the South African sites, because they're aligning now, and they only align every 21,000 years. So they it definitely seems like they're coming online to help the planet. I think that's spot on. One of the reasons as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're at that turning point. You know, it's been 26,000 years, moving into Aquarius or moved. But a whole new consciousness doesn't appear that way. Things look pretty bad. But as there are negative forces, there are equal and opposite positive forces. So it's interesting to work with these polarities.
Absolutely. And I think it does feel like a turning point, because of the difficulties people are in. They are looking at things like life alignment where they wouldn't have before, and they're looking at like my movie, the spirituality of ancient cultures that maybe we've lost. And
exactly.
people are waking up.
Yeah. And remembering.
And
Because it's
remembering.
ancient stuff. It's remembering.
Yes.
And I'm sure there will be discoveries like under the pyramids, under the Sphinx, there's supposed to be all sorts of stuff to be discovered. And it will be revealed, ancient texts and so on, but energetically. And I want to applaud the work you're doing of making a movie with Dean and others to highlight and bring this to people's awareness and consciousness. And it's people like yourself that have that ability that can really do that profoundly and touch so many people.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you so much for giving us a journey of life alignment, because it's not easy to fully explain it. And I think that the founder and the person that downloaded all of it is the perfect person to really explain what an amazing modality this is and what a gift it is to us. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Nikki. It's always great to work with you.
Likewise. Cool. Thank you, Jeff. I think we'll leave it there, unless there's anything else that you feel you would like to say.
Well, I think we were connected in some ancient cultures sometimes, and we're just coming back together again to work together, right?
I think so.
That's how it works. We have these soul contracts and connections, and nothing happens by chance. And the big thing to realize, which life alignment brings to light, is that we are not doing this alone. We are not alone. There are many, many forces, beings, light beings that are absolutely available to support us. Just a matter of trusting and invoking them and receiving them.
Thank you. Thank you for that very important message, Jeff.
Very important.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to NixyPod. You can follow me, Nikki Felbert, on Instagram and Twitter, and you can check out my latest film, Origins of Consciousness, on Fundraiser and Facebook. If you haven't yet, you can subscribe, rate, and review NixyPod on this podcast and on YouTube.